In Zimbabwe, right now, there is a war being fought, but you will not see it on a battlefield. You will not hear it in a press conference. You will not find it in any official statement from Harare. It is being fought in whispers, in corridors, in loyalty tests, in sudden promotions and quiet removals. It is the war for Zimbabwe's throne, and it has already begun. Emerson Mnangagwa, the man they call the crocodile, a nickname he did not choose, but has never rejected. Because in Zimbabwean politics, a crocodile is exactly what you need to be to survive. He came to power in 2017 after one of the most dramatic political moments in modern African history. Robert Mugabe, who had ruled Zimbabwe for 37 years, was removed, not by a popular revolution, not by an election, by his own party, by his own military, by the very system he had built, and Mnangagwa stepped in. But here is what Zimbabwe's history has taught anyone paying attention. Every man who sits in that chair eventually has to face the same question his predecessor faced. Who comes next? And will you choose them, or will they choose themselves? ZANU-PF is not just a political party. It is an institution, a structure built over decades of liberation, struggle, post-independence governance, international isolation, and internal purges. It has survived sanctions. It has survived economic collapse. It has survived the fall of its founding father. What it has never cleanly survived is succession. Because in ZANU-PF, succession is not a process, it is a competition. And competitions inside that party have historically been dangerous for the people who lose them. Right now, Zimbabwe is in a peculiar political moment. Mnangagwa is in power. He is consolidating. He is pushing through CAB 3, the constitutional amendment that would extend presidential terms from 5 to 7 years and fundamentally restructure how Zimbabwe's president is elected. And many political analysts looking at the full picture of CAB 3 are saying the same thing quietly. This bill is not just about development. It is not just about infrastructure and investment cycles. It is about time, buying time, extending the runway, ensuring that whoever comes after Mnangagwa does not come too soon. And that when succession does happen, it happens on ZANU-PF's terms, controlled, managed, choreographed. But inside the party, the choreography is already breaking down because there are names. There are always names in Zimbabwean politics. Names being spoken in meeting rooms and party gatherings and military circles and business networks. Names attached to ambitions that are growing louder by the day, even when their owners are smiling publicly and pledging loyalty. Let us talk about those names. The first conversation always leads to Constantino Chiwenga, the man who stood in front of cameras in November 2017 and told Zimbabwe and the world that the military was intervening not to stage a coup. He insisted, but to deal with criminals around Mugabe. He is the vice president, a former military commander, a man with deep institutional roots inside Zimbabwe's security establishment, a man whose health battles have been public and whose political ambitions have never fully been confirmed or denied. Chiwenga represents the military wing of ZANU-PF's soul, the liberation struggle generation, the men who believe their sacrifice gives them permanent claim on Zimbabwe's future. And his relationship with Mnangagwa is a relationship between two powerful men who need each other and trust each other only to the degree that power requires. Then there is Opa Muchinguri, ZANU-PF chairperson, long-serving, strategically positioned, a woman in a party where women have historically been celebrated in rhetoric and sidelined in reality. Her name surfaces in succession conversations not as a front runner but as a kingmaker, someone whose support can shift the internal mathematics of a leadership contest decisively. And then there are the younger faces, the technocrats and politicians who represent ZANU-PF's attempt to present a modernized face to the world. Names whose ambitions are less visible but no less real. People who understand that Mnangagwa will not be president forever and who are positioning themselves quietly, carefully, without triggering the crocodile's attention before they are ready. Because that is the most dangerous game in Zimbabwean politics. Moving too soon, showing your hand before the moment is right, becoming visible as a threat before you have the protection to survive being seen as one. Robert Mugabe destroyed people who moved too soon. Mnangagwa watched that happen up close for decades. He learned the lesson from the master, which means anyone hoping to succeed him had better have learnt it too. Here is the part of this succession story that almost nobody is saying out loud. CAB3, if it passes in its current form, does not just extend Mnangagwa's time in power. It potentially reconfigures what succession inside ZANU-PF even means. If the president is no longer directly elected by the people but instead chosen through a parliamentary process, then controlling parliament becomes the key to controlling who becomes president. And who controls parliament? ZANU-PF, with its majority, with its structures, with its internal dynamics, which means succession in Zimbabwe under CAB3 would no longer be decided by millions of voters standing in queues. It would be decided in a room, a parliamentary room full of people whose careers, whose futures, whose safety depend on making the right choice when the party tells them to choose. This is not democracy with a different flavor. This is a system where the next president of Zimbabwe could be chosen by the same political machinery that the current president controls. And that machinery already has candidates in mind. The question is not who is ambitious enough to want the job. In ZANU-PF, everyone at a certain level is ambitious enough to want the job. The question is who Mnangagwa trusts enough, who the military accepts, who the old guard tolerates, who the younger generation can be managed with, who the business community has already started building relationships with. That intersection of interests, that complicated, dangerous, high-stakes Venn diagram is where Zimbabwe's next president is being born right now. Zimbabweans are not naive about this. They have watched succession politics inside ZANU-PF their entire lives. They watched Mugabe outmaneuver every potential successor for 4 decades until age and his own wife's ambitions finally caught up with him. They watched Mnangagwa wait patiently, strategically, for years until his moment came in the most dramatic fashion possible. And they understand that what is happening now, KB3, the constitutional restructuring, the extension of terms, the transfer of electoral management is not separate from succession politics. It is succession politics, just dressed in the language of development and stability. On the streets of Harare and Bulawayo, ordinary Zimbabweans are asking questions they have asked before. Will the next leader be different? Will the transfer of power, whenever it comes, be peaceful? Will Zimbabwe ever reach the moment where succession is a democratic event rather than an internal party negotiation conducted behind closed doors? Regional observers across Southern Africa are watching this closely because Zimbabwe's stability or instability during a succession moment has consequences that stretch well beyond its borders. South Africa, Zambia, Mozambique, Botswana, they all feel the tremors when Zimbabwe shakes, and the international community, already watching CAB 3 with concern, is factoring succession dynamics into every assessment they make about Zimbabwe's democratic trajectory. Because at the end of every constitutional amendment conversation, at the end of every development argument, at the end of every debate about electoral cycles and parliamentary processes, there is a human question underneath all of it. Who will rule Zimbabwe next? How will they get there? And what will be left of the country's democratic institutions by the time they arrive? Mnangagwa is not gone. He's not going anywhere soon. And with CAB 3 potentially extending his mandate and restructuring how his successor will eventually be chosen, he is building a system designed to outlast his own presidency. The names being whispered in corridors have not stopped being whispered. The ambitions have not cooled. The calculations are being made and remade every time a new political development shifts the internal balance of ZANU-PF's complex machinery. Chiwenga watches. The technocrat's position. The old guard holds on. The younger generation waits. And Zimbabwe, as it has always done, watches its own future being decided by a small number of powerful people in rooms that ordinary citizens will never enter. The crocodile has survived everything Zimbabwe's politics has thrown at him. Wars, purges, near-death experiences, political exile, and his own party's attempt to destroy him before he destroyed it first. But even crocodiles do not live forever. And when this one finally steps back from the water's edge, who exactly is waiting in the reeds? How long have they been there? And will Zimbabwe's democracy be strong enough to matter by the time that moment arrives? Or will the next ruler simply be chosen the same way the last one was, not by the people, but by the party, the military, and the men currently holding all the cards? Share this, debate it, because this is not just Zimbabwe's question. This is Africa's question. And the answer is coming sooner than anyone is ready for.